This is Batshit Crazy, a podcast dedicated to all things strange and unusual, with your spirit guides Heather and Dylan, who will take you to the other side. Subject matter featured on Batshit Crazy may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
This is Batshit Crazy. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Yes, you are. It's your birthday.
They say it's my birthday.
Happy birthday to you. What are you, 23?
I'm getting younger.
18 in life to go?
I'm having a reverse birthday.
Like a Skid Row song?
More like a Skid Mark song.
Who are you, fucking Benjamin Button over here?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to regress.
I believe you're doing that already.
Yes, it's true.
You don't need a birthday for that.
Thank you for that.
Are you ready for the bloodletting?
I am ready to be sucked upon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well. Today, we will be discussing vampires.
The vampire.
Or if you live in the mountains like we do, it's them vampers.
It's a vampire.
It's them goddamn vampers.
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by the subject of vampires. Have you?
Yeah. I mean, I believe most people would be. It's so fascinating.
It is so fascinating, and it all cultures have some story that's similar to vampires, and it's went back, thousands of years?
Well, we're going to talk about that right now, Dylan.
Oh, my God.
I'm about to put my education upon you.
Yeah, read me
put
stuff.
Put it in your face.
Ooh.
Vampires are evil mythological creatures who are said to be nocturnal. They roam the earth feeding off human blood. Vampires are probably the most recognizable classic monster. They are said to be undead creatures with eternal life. Modern-day vampires supposedly have fangs, drink blood, can't see their reflections in mirrors, and can only be killed by sunlight or when a stake is driven through their hearts.
And we're not talking ribeye.
No, it has to be a wooden stake, right?
Correct.
In theory, vampires only hunt at night because sunlight drastically weakens them. Some may have the ability to morph into a bat or a wolf.
Or it can make them sparkle, according to Twilight.
Oh, geez.
Oh, my God.
If a person is bitten by a vampire, they may also be turned. Or turned.
So basically,
They'd be getting turned.
In the old lore, the movie lore, if you will.
Yes, sir.
If they don't drain you completely and kill you, now you've been infected in a sense, and you will become a vampire.
Yes. Otherwise, if you're not turned, you just become an entree.
Ooh, I like that.
But the vampire, as we know it, was not always so.
I know. I'm actually amazed through this research at the different iterations, if you will, of vampires and what people thought a vampire was.
Vampires have appeared in cultures dating back at least 4,000 years. The Mesopotamians, Hebrews, ancient Greeks, Romans, and the Manipuri of India had stories of demons and spirits, which were precursors to the modern vampire. In Mesopotamia, a creature called the Ikumu, which I'm probably butchering, the translation is snatched away.
Yeah, fortunately, there's no one left from Mesopotamia to say you're butchering our culture.
Well, the Ikimu, meaning snatched away, was known as an angry, bitter spirit that was banished to roam the earth in search of peace. The Ikimu feeds off life forces of plants, animals, and human auras. So I imagine like a psychic vampire?
Oh, I was going to say, he's a psychic vampire creature.
There were also 7 demons mentioned in various Mesopotamian texts. The 7 demons share characteristics of what we think of modern vampires. Lamashtu, daughter of the sky god Anu, was said to drink blood of men and eat their flesh. Lilith was another Babylonian demon, which also appears in Jewish lore. And she was thought to, be a nocturnal creature, sucking the life force out of mostly men.
Ooh.
But then later was supposed to prey on like pregnant women and babies.
Oh, it sounds like a very active succubus.
Yeah,
Ooh.
Basically. The living have feared the dead for many years. Included in this notion was the idea of an unholy resurrection in which the dead would rise and terrorize the living. In a prehistoric village dating back to Jordan 9,000 years ago, there is evidence that these people dismembered their dead before burying them. And this was to ward off any undead lurkings which might occur.
So they weren't taking any chances.
No.
They just chopped them up, and like, no, if they try to come back, they're going to be chopped up, and we already took care of it.
I reckon so.
Now, could you imagine having a superstition that drives you to the point you chop up family and loved ones when you bury them?
I think that should just be a tradition anyway.
Well, just in case.
Because, I mean, why not?
Yeah, but I feel like there should be a company that handles that, because I wouldn't want to chop my own people up. Would you?
Somebody put Granny in a bathtub.
Did I just create a new career?
Yeah, I think so. In Egypt, a 3,800-year-old papyrus text called Ramesseum III was found in Thebes, and there was a demonic winged creature called Ba, which was a verb for drinking blood. There was also a Book of the Dead written around 1500 BCE, which mentions a blood-drinking creature. In the Egyptian story, the destruction of mankind, humans were pitted against the god Ra, who sends a goddess Hathor to wipe them out. Hathor tastes human blood and transforms into a Sekhmet, and a Sekhmet appears red in most depictions. Her sanguinary lifestyle is a major focus of many myths. As the goddess of blood, she was used to explain about like blood shed, war, like all of the, terrible atrocities that were happening at the time.
So it was almost like a sacrifice to her because she needed to drink the blood.
She provided women guidance during their menstrual cycles and supposedly drank a river of blood at one point. A prevalent story from ancient Egypt centers around the Nile's annual threat to overflow. There was a threat of a red water drowning out the villages and crops. The silt in the water turned it red, so these ancient peoples believed the river turned to blood, and Sekhmet was drinking it to remove danger. So in some ways, she represents the balance of good and evil.
Well, that's an interesting way to look at it. I think the men around the women menstruating need counsel, not the women themselves.
I think you should probably just be quiet.
Probably like a support group or something.
Before something happens to you. Vlad the Impaler was a ruler born in Transylvania, Romania. He ruled the Wallachia area of Romania between 1456 and 1462. He was known as a brutally cruel warrior who fought off the Ottomans. He impaled his enemies on a wooden stake. His terrible acts being circulated among letters, that kind of thing, made their way to the Pope. And he was idolized in poetry as a beast. So stories of Vlad were published in the Holy Roman Empire around 1480, and they mostly regarded him as a plundering, raiding psychopath who made his way across the Danube. He was described as a demented psychopath, a sadist, a gruesome murderer, and some say he was the inspiration for Bram Stoker's famous novel, Dracula, which was published in 1897.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are familiar with Vlad the Impaler or have heard of him. But, I mean, supposedly there'd be actually fields of people, after a battle, or just people who crossed him, just staked on these big stakes, many feet off the ground. So could you imagine coming upon that and seeing something like that?
I was just imagining the person responsible for creating the stakes. Like what a job that is. I need 4,000.
Yeah, we need 4,000 stakes 12 foot long. Can you do it?
I need them by tomorrow.
I need them by tomorrow because
exactly.
We're going to make an example out of this entire village.
The story of Count Dracula is about his attempt to move from Transylvania to England so that he may find new blood and spread the undead curse.
Ooh.
During the Middle Ages, the stories of vampirism spread. Superstition was growing as the plague began decimating populations across Europe. Many were left with bloody mouth lesions, which the uneducated believed were a sign of vampirism. A blood disorder known as porphyria, which causes the body to produce less heme. It's a critical component of hemoglobin. It's the protein the red blood cells carry. They carry oxygen from the lungs to the body tissues. And it can cause these blisters on skin when exposed to sunlight. So this has also been linked to the vampire legend, and some even call it the vampire disease.
So basically it was some kind of blood disorder that people did not understand. And all they saw, which, it's not really their fault. They truly didn't have the knowledge to know better. And so all they saw was someone who goes out in the sun and develops these horrible lesions or, blisters, and that's different than they are. And so, yeah, therefore, that's how vampires are in the sun. They can't be in the sun.
And then you had the plague.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was called the Dark Ages for a reason, because people
had to stay inside because they had vampire disease.
That's not right. That's not true.
How do you know?
Well, maybe that's
You weren't there.
Well, that's true.
Fake news.
But no, people were very superstitious. They were, they just came up with mystical or magic things or some kind of curse. It explained everything, it seemed like. And they just didn't have any scientific knowledge to refute that evidence.
Right. So both of these illnesses caused people to, go into this vampire frenzy. Vampires everywhere. Peter Plagojewicz
well, I bet that's exactly
was
right.
a Serbian villager and accused creature of the night. He was exhumed and staked through the heart a few weeks after his death in 1725. In the book Vampires, Burial, and Death, a folklorist named Paul Barber says that Plagojewicz was the epitome of the European vampire because when they exhumed his body, it showed this broader pattern of superstition.
Oh, okay.
Because you're digging him up, they're staking him through the heart. I mean, the guy's dead. And he was also the first in his village to die of a sickness. And then a lot of other locals started dying as well. So people were blaming him, saying, well, he must be a vampire. He gave everyone this disease. And now he's out stalking them, late at night and spreading the disease.
So they basically thought he would leave his grave, infect people, and things like that, and then return to his grave during the daytime kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually the spelling of his name was lost to the, annals of time, and no one's exactly sure how his name is spelled. So you're doing a really good job of trying to pronounce it.
Well, thanks. The tale of Arnold Paoli is another example. In the early 18th century, the Serbian broke his neck after falling from a wagon, and like many others before him, he was accused of being a vampire, exhumed after a series of deaths in his village, which people felt he was responsible. Austrian military authorities in control of this region even investigated the deaths, and their published account was widely told. Paoli's case is responsible for spreading the vampire superstition to Western Europe.
Oh, wow.
When stories of vampires made their way to the New World, of course, people were believing. I mean, they had just burned burned witches like a century before.
Yeah, so it's almost a similar trope. It's you're in service in league with the devil, and you were just doing evil things, to pure Christian people.
Frederick Ransom, he was a Dartmouth College student and came from a pretty well-respected family in Vermont. He died of tuberculosis in 1817, and Ransom's father had his body exhumed in the hopes of saving the rest of the family. They burned Frederick's heart in a blacksmith's forge.
Oh, they weren't taking any chances.
In 1892, a 19-year-old named Mercy Brown from Exeter, Rhode Island, died from tuberculosis. Her mother and older sister had passed before from the illness. As the disease spread, Mercy was accused of being a vampire. Her body was exhumed for study. She had been buried in a vault during a harsh New England winter, so there was not the expected amount of decomposition. Investigators immediately determined she must be a vampire. And during the autopsy, she allegedly still had blood in her heart. It was cut out and burned. Some of her ashes were then fed to her younger brother, Edwin, who was also suffering from tuberculosis. He died soon after.
What the hell? I mean, how did they think that was going to help her brother?
Mercy Brown is probably one of the most famous cases of vampirism in America or in the United States. A lot of people know the Rhode Island vampire story centers around Mercy Brown.
Yeah, and I found it interesting that much like the witches and the witch trials and the methods they use to connect people, moles, birthmarks, things that everyone has.
Triple nipples,
extra nipple. That's where the devil suckles from your bosom. And but yeah, they
every morning.
they use the same methodology to spot a vampire. So what the hell?
Dylan, you are going to bring us up to modern times and discuss the birth of the modern vampire.
Well, yes, I'm actually here to alert people that there are as many as 5,000 New World vampires walking amongst us at this very moment.
No.
Now, how did I come up with this number, you would ask? Well, the Atlanta Vampire Alliance did a survey nationwide, and that the respondents they got back, that's the figure they came up with.
Really? I think it would be much larger. I'm surprised.
Well, these are the real deal. These are not, as you would call, goth people who are into vampire fashion or culture or stuff like that. These are people who truly believe they need human or animal blood to continue living.
They need it. It's their sustenance.
Yes, it is their sustenance, and actually, it sounds like they have lupus when they don't when they don't consume blood. They are just very tired and unmotivated, and start feeling sick, almost like a drug withdrawal sickness, deep aching in their bones. And the only thing that will fix it is another dose of human or animal blood.
They got to have a fix.
Yes, they need that fix, and oftentimes these feelings, according to these modern day vampires, or these feelings arise during or directly after puberty, adolescence. That's when they start having these cravings, if you will.
Well, I understand that.
Well, I have cravings too, but it's just for sweets and beer.
I want cornbread all the time.
So you're similar in that respect. Murticus, a man who is 37 years old, is a founding member of the Atlanta Vampire Alliance, and he has identified as a vampire since 1997. True vampires shy away from movie lore and pop culture, and the buzzwords. Many are not into goth and are regular-looking citizens, according to him. So, for all you know, one may be living next door to you right now, consuming human blood.
Maybe one's living right beside you. Maybe one's sitting across from you right now. Speaking in a microphone.
Oh my God. I did not even contemplate the fact that I may be sharing a bed with a vampire. Well, that's kind of fucked up that you've never bitten me during sex.
That's why I have a really strange sleep cycle.
That's true. You can't sleep at night because
It's not insomnia, okay?
You're compelled to hunt.
I'm coming out of the closet.
No, coming out of the coffin.
Okay.
Got to get your words right on that. Yeah, and some of the real vampires make fun of lifestylers, they call them, a.k.a. fashion vamps, a.k.a. posers.
Those trendy vampire whores.
Yeah, so these people take it serious, and they feel like they really need the human blood. Yeah, there are different types of vampires. You have your sanguinarians. That's the ones who actually need to feed off human blood.
They want to drink your blood.
Yes, very much like that.
Okay.
So they need blood, animal blood, human blood.
Blood. I've just been waiting for this episode so I could do the corniest vampire voice.
Are you going to do Count Dracula? Like from Sesame Street?
I will count the 1, 2, 3.
It says 1.
I don't know.
2.
Okay, well, I fucked it up.
Okay. Jeez Louise. And you also have the psychic vampire who feeds off people's energy, off their auras.
See, I want to figure out, how to do this.
I know.
Instead of going out in public and then I leave feeling drained of my life force, I want to start draining other people of their life force.
So you feel like they're taking your energy and you want to take it back.
Yes. That's why I don't leave the house. I can't.
Yeah, so I know for a fact in my life I've come across psychic vampires.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Everyone out there knows that person who you could be just chilling with friends or family and everything's quiet and calm, and they bust through the door, and they're typically drama queens.
They're like a little Jersey devil.
Yes.
Like just buzzing around in a little whirlwind.
Very much so. And they just go, and everything's about them.
A little chaos cloud,
Yes.
dusting up from their little fast feet.
All drama all the time, and it's just like they're talking all this shit, and nobody there cares or wants to hear it, and then they leave, and then everyone's just like, shoo.
Like they just sucked all the air out of the room.
What the fuck just happened?
And you feel totally drained.
Exactly. That's a psychic vampire.
I know that person.
So the psychic vampires do a thing they call ambient feeding, which is where they would go to a large crowded area, mall, fair, something
Motley Crue
concert, and feed off just the energy in the room kind of thing. And then they also do contact feeding, which is when they actually have their hand on your arm or something like that. And they also do tantric feeding, which they would do during a sexual encounter.
Yeah.
Ooh, that sounds pretty hot.
I feel like that happens quite a bit. Because you just go to sleep.
Well, and you also have the hybrid, which would be a marriage of the psychic and sanguinarian vampire. I guess they get to do both.
I'm sorry, I tantric vampire sex you to sleep. To a gentle slumber.
So these individuals claim they have a medical condition that requires them to drink blood or absorb energy, as in the psychic vampire's case, in order to sustain themselves.
I'm fallen, and I need a blood drink now. Like that.
Exactly like that.
Okay.
So actually nowadays, in the modern day, these people do not just randomly go around attacking people. Actually, some people in the community do not, or what they call rogues, and they don't follow this set of ethics that they have. But actually, there's a donor bill of rights.
There's like a little code of conduct.
Yes, there's a how
cute.
you act. Yes, it's a donor bill of rights, and they use donor networks, and it could be friends, family, it could be a stranger, but they will actually almost sign kind of like a contract.
I imagine there's probably some blood testing involved.
Both of them will get tested before they have an encounter, because obviously the dangers involved would be bloodborne diseases, and also I didn't realize this, you can have too much iron in your body. And that's another complication that arises from this. But the modern day vampires say it's not easy being a vampire. We don't want to be this way, but we have to do these things. Yeah.
They don't choose the vampire life. It chooses them.
Exactly right.
Man.
And so they feed. That's to drink blood. And then you have a donor. That's someone who offers their blood in one way or the other. And some other terms they use is they are awakened or coming out of the coffin.
Okay, I need to come out of the coffin.
Which is making your identity known to others.
What if I can't afford a coffin and I have to hang upside down in my closet to sleep?
Well, I think that you could do that. I think you'd want to reinforce your closet pole because most of them are pretty flimsy.
Well, no, it works.
You think so?
Well, I do it every day when you're at work.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know.
Who did I marry?
I'm not sure.
Sometimes I wonder.
I'm feeling a little goofy today.
I see that.
I'm just goofing. Just podcast goofing.
And so actually everything you read about the modern day vampire, you'll come upon the names of D.J. Williams from the Idaho State University has studied the modern day vampire. And even more interesting to me was John Edgar Browning, who made contact with some covens or vampire houses, if you will, in New Orleans. And he had always studied, Mr. Browning had always studied vampire lore, the mythology, kind of the stuff you were going through earlier. And at the very end of his studies, he decided to make contact with the modern day real life vampires. And he was expecting like some people who were kind of really weird and crazy and all that. Like some people might think these people are like.
I just imagine someone who looks like Nosferatu.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Like running around in like a black cloak, terrorizing people, peeking in their windows.
Well, yeah. And I think a lot of people, when you hear vampire, they think, oh, gnarly, gruesome creature that is evil and all that. But what he come to find out was these were fairly normal people for the most part, and you couldn't like pick them out of a crowd. And so the elders who have been this way for all, longer than everyone else, people who are older will create these vampire houses or covens, and then people can kind of link up and join together. And they counsel the younger vampires. Now, there's a little bit of showmanship in all this, I'm sure. But from what I could tell, they take it very seriously and think it's a real condition that they all suffer from.
What I find really interesting is that the older, more traditional vampires were unashamed bloodsuckers. They were never afraid to kill. They didn't concern themselves with human nonsense like ethics and morals. Like I mentioned, Nosferatu, probably one of the most famous vampires portrayed in film. He was repulsive. I mean, he almost had like an alien look about him. He was deformed. He had the long fangs, the scary talon fingers.
Yeah, see, early on, there was no romanticized version of this elegant, aristocratic, rich, handsome, very charismatic vampire. They were literal ghouls, creatures of the night, more like the Nosferatu that you're describing. And people didn't think they were sexy, and they didn't want to be swooned by the vampire.
Well, even in the Middle Ages, the way they described vampires were that they were like bloated, like these disgusting bloated creatures that were kind of had a ruddy or like purple complexion because they were, full of blood and they had just fed, and they were all just kind of like little fat ticks.
Yeah, disgusting.
Yeah.
Nothing handsome about them.
And then there was like a big shift, it seemed, from like maybe the 70s into the 80s and then the 90s. You had Interview with a Vampire, which of course was the Anne Rice novel. It was published in the 70s, but the movie wasn't, filmed or made until the 90s. And it took Brad Pitt, who was honestly, probably one of the most attractive men alive. And Tom Cruise.
A young Brad Pitt is a fairly handsome feller. I'll give you that.
Hey, Brad Pitt now is pretty hot. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Did you see those abs?
Can I say that girl in that movie got on my damn nerves? I don't know why. I just wanted them to kill her.
Who? Margot Robbie?
The little girl in the Interview with a Vampire.
Oh, Kirsten Dunst. You had me all confused.
That makes sense because it's Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. So you had Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise. They were both super hot. You had Antonio Banderas as like the sexy foreign vampire.
Oh, I'm Antonio Banderas.
So vampires were really different from, back in the day until now, because it seems like Interview with a Vampire really kind of changed vampires into these hero types. Then you had True Blood, the TV show. We had Bill Compton, who was just like the Southern gentleman. The vampires portrayed on that show were not all bad.
No.
Then you had Twilight.
Bro.
Kind of romanticized. You had the sparkly, glittery vampire.
You're leaving out the first commercially successful comic book movie, Blade. Wesley Snipes. Oh my God, I can't even look at you right now.
I've never seen Blade.
Well, you should watch Blade because it's as far as the hero, you making them nice and heroic and kind of having a conscience. You can't overlook Blade.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for sharing. I've honestly never seen Blade.
Oh my God. Okay, so there's your vampires.
Yeah, so that's a bit of the history. Now I think it's important, Dylan, to talk about New Orleans. Well, what do you think makes New Orleans like a city of vampires? Do you think it has something to do with Anne Rice having lived there and being a writer and creating these characters? Or do you think there's something else that attracts the vampire community to New Orleans?
Well, I think we've been there to New Orleans, down in the French Quarter. You've been multiple times. And I think just from going around the city, especially downtown, it seems kind of gothy and
there's a rich culture there,
creepy, and you have the voodoo connection, right? And all those old superstitions.
Like maybe it's a more open-minded area.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just kind of
there's a big nightlife.
It's kind of cool and kind of sexy. I think that's a perfect place that if you were a vampire, you would want to hang out.
I want to live there, and I'm not a sexy vampire.
It would be easy to pick off drunks around the French Quarter.
I'm more like the middle age, like the fat, bloaty vampire. It's all swollen.
Why do you think? You think those are some of the reasons people may be drawn to New Orleans?
Probably. I mean, you've got to consider the active nightlife there. If they really are like nocturnal creatures, there's always a party until 6 a.m.
Well, it's
Bourbon
true.
Street. Yeah.
It's true.
Let's talk a bit about some of our favorite vampire films.
Okay, so we had you said a top 5.
We should come up with a top 5, exactly.
And I may be leaving one out here, but I believe I have 5.
Well, hit me with your best shot.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and throw Blade out
Sink
there.
your teeth into it.
The first Blade.
Okay.
I saw it. I was a rather young man, and it was incredible. I think it was an incredible vampire movie in the modern day.
Is Stephen Dorff in that?
Yes.
Okay.
He is Deacon Frost.
He's a cute, tiny man.
He's a little guy. They really do a good job of not making him seem so small, which they do that with Tom Cruise as well. Yeah.
Blade. Okay. Next.
No, you should give me one.
Okay, for my first pick, Stakeland.
Stakeland is a really good movie. I think me and you stumbled upon that together, didn't we?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that film.
Yeah, Stakeland 2, not all that good. But the first Stakeland is a very good movie.
I thought so.
Very good movie. And then I'm going to have to throw in there 30 Days of Night.
That's the one with Josh Heartthrob, right?
Yes, Josh, what was his name?
Hartnett.
Josh Hartnett, and it is there in Alaska where, the sun's going to set and be gone for weeks on end. And I think this is an incredible, well-done vampire movie. And very scary. And I thought, you get different representations of the vampire in each movie. And theirs are more ghoulish and kind of like an I Am Legend.
They almost gave me a zombie.
Yes.
Like a zombie vampire.
Yes, they're more ghoulish and kind of don't act human at all. Yeah, and I thought that was very fucking scary. And let alone the isolation of the situation they're in.
Second on my list, number 2, is What We Do in the Shadows.
Well,
the film is funny as fuck, and then the TV series is also fucking hilarious.
It's hilarious. If you haven't seen the movie, you should start there and then move on to the TV series. It's hilarious. And if you like anything vampires and all the legends, the way they mix it in and the writing's incredible.
Yeah, it's like a dry kind of humor. It's super funny.
Yeah, my next one is probably one on your list. I get to say it before you. I'm going to. The Lost Boys.
Well, that's a classic.
I think that has to be on everybody's list. The only way it couldn't be is if you hadn't seen it, which then I'd be like, wow, you're a reptilian because you're not human. Why haven't you seen The Lost Boys?
Well, it's an amazing film. I mean, it's set in the 80s, so you've got all the cool 80s cheese. You've got the 2 Coreys. Super hot Jason Patrick. What an all-star cast. Kiefer. Jamie Gertz.
Yup. What's your next one?
Transfiguration.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
I think you fell asleep.
Is that the one with that little black boy? Was that really weird? You said it was like a slow burn, but a very weird movie.
It was super good.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
Transfiguration. Figuration.
What's transfiguration?
Okay, I'm going to go with next the remake of the Swedish film Let the Right One In.
That's a great one.
That was a good one. Again, a slow burn.
Yeah. Children.
And it's just these 2 children for most of the movie, but very scary. And it's almost like you got this moral dilemma, mixed in there. I thought it was very well done.
Okay, my number 5, of course, the classic Nosferatu.
Yeah, I think you have to pick that just because I think when I watch silent films and these very old films, it's amazing how much they can convey, how much information they can convey with scenes and the shots and the way they're set up. Don't you agree?
Well, I studied film in college, so I'll be quiet.
Look at me.
So I really enjoyed German Expressionist horror, and this was directed by F.W. Murnau. It starred Max Schreck as Count Orlok, the vampire, and he's fucking terrifying. He is like the creature of your nightmares, for real.
Yes, I'm sure, especially back then, that people were just wholly terrified by watching this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's called Nosferatu, a symphony of horror, and it is. I mean, it's freaky. But it's great. It's the black and white, the shadows. I mean, it's just a really remarkable, piece of cinema.
It's very scary. I mean, it really is. And then I'm going for my last movie. I do have an honorable mention I just thought of. But for my last movie, I'm going to go with Bram Stoker's Dracula, the one with Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman. I thought it was very well done.
Winona Forever.
And I thought it was very well done, and I think they really paid homage to the classic story, the very famous classic story.
And we all know Keanu is not the best actor, but he does an okay job in that film.
He does an okay job, but it's almost like he can never get away from that like surfer dude stuff, especially when he was younger. He did.
He's like, yo, what's up? Count Dracula. Yeah. You want to go catch some waves with me and Bodie?
Yeah, basically. And but he got away.
Hey, Utah, get me too.
He got away from that. Wow, Point Break references. That's great.
What can I say?
You can say that.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah, but I thought it was very well done. Gary Oldman was incredible. That's more of the sexy, charismatic, all-powerful kind of vampire. Yeah.
And he had like the horny vampire chicks.
There's some pretty...
Lucy.
One of them's redheaded.
Yeah.
I do remember that as a
remember that too.
very young man watching that scene maybe more than once. And yeah. So did you have another one?
I would add Interview with a Vampire.
I didn't want to.
I know that you're not a big fan of that film, but I liked it.
I liked it. It really brings up the moral dilemmas of the vampires living forever, getting bored, having all this wealth, which I always found intriguing. And I mean, really think about it. If you lived for hundreds or thousands of years, after a while, and you could never connect to anyone outside of you or your little vampire clique, because they always aged and died, which I kind of find fascinating. And yeah, so I mean, I see why you added it, but at the same time, something about it bugs me. I don't know what it is.
See, I feel like I would make a great vampire because I'm a night owl. I'm a creature of solitude. I would literally have no problems with like everybody dying and I'm just like hanging out. I would think of all the great hobbies. I think of all the things you could learn over the centuries. I would never get bored.
Oh, so you're going to
I'd be like doing a night kayaking paddle.
So you're going to be like a genius in all these different fields?
Yeah. Learning to play like the banjo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd be fun at parties.
Right?
Yeah, and I'm going to give an honorable mention on the vampire movies to the movie Vampires with James Woods. If you haven't seen that, it is just kind of sticky, a little bit corny, but have great effects, and the kills are incredible.
And then, of course, the 80s gem, Fright Night, which was probably the first vampire film I ever saw.
Holy shit, we needed to do more than 5, because I can't believe I left out Fright Night.
I know. People are probably like, who gives a fuck? But if you're a vampire film fan, then you're cool with this shit.
Yeah, and then you do have...
Because Fright Night, Chris Sarandon, I mean, he was like the hot, sexy vampire.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and you just want Charlie to win, and he couldn't. And then he brings the vampire hunter in. Was it Vincent Price?
No, it was like some little dorky guy.
But he was supposed to be like Vincent Price.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, and see now my
head...
head...
Charlie had like the annoying like buddy.
Yeah, that's the dude from 976 Evil.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy with the... he's like, yeah, Charlie.
Yeah.
Join,
he's a vampire.
Join us, Charlie.
Like, you just know that kid's going to fucking die like any minute.
Oh, my
or
God.
Or at least you're hoping he does.
So many movies coming up now.
So many vampire films, so little time, Dylan.
Can we not include Twilight? Because they did everything to tear vampires down, and it's ridiculous.
No, but I have a Twilight horror story. About a year ago, when COVID first began, and I was trapped at home with the children, my son decided to order and, well, actually just buy all of the Twilight films.
Yeah, it was like $75 worth of movies.
Yeah,
right?
well, I noticed this bill, like an Amazon bill, and I was like, what, $75? I didn't order anything. So I started prying and discover that my son has purchased all of the Twilight films. Yeah, so now we own those.
Now you have those.
They're all downloaded in our Prime account, Dylan. We're so lucky.
Man, I'm so glad I can go back. I can start tonight and watch all of them from start to finish.
Oh, since he downloaded, I've had to watch Twilight more than a couple times.
Nice.
No.
Oh, my gosh.
No.
All right, let's bring this thing home. I'm sure we left out some great vampire movies. I'm just going to kind of just start ripping through them again.
Okay, well, I'm going to go climb in the coffin, get ready for some tantric vampire sex.
Ooh.
No, not really.
I want to have some of that.
Probably just going to go eat a snack. But you guys have a great week.